What the hell is this? I invited her for fun. And this maid shows up. Wearing a cheap imitation of Lorraine Harris's legendary dress. Disgrace.
This is my dress.
She grabbed the fabric, tore it, splashed champagne in Lorraine's face.
Your dress? You can't afford a zipper.
She covered her ears mockingly.
It hums around my house every day, smells like cat poop haunting me. Should we let the maid perform?
300 people laughing. Victoria snatched the $1 million mic, slammed it against Lorraine's chest.
Sing, maid. Make someone feel something, and this mic is yours.
Lorraine gripped the mic, closed her eyes, and began to sing. What happened next left everyone speechless. But before we get to that moment, let me take you back. 3 weeks earlier, a Wednesday morning in Stamford, Connecticut. The sun hadn't come up yet. The kitchen smelled like instant coffee and toast burning at the edges. Lorraine Harris stood at the counter in a faded blue robe, waiting for the coffee maker to finish its slow, rattling drip. She poured into a chipped mug. No sugar, no cream, just black. And then, without thinking about it, she started to hum, low at first, almost a whisper. Then it rose, a melody that once filled stadiums, a voice that once made grown men weep and teenage girls scream her name from nosebleed seats. But that was a long time ago. Lorraine Harris, the Lorraine Harris, had been one of the greatest voices America ever produced. In the late 80s and through the 90s, she was untouchable. 5 Grammy Awards, 3 platinum albums, a voice that critics called once in a century. And then they took it all away. Not her voice, her career. The industry she gave everything to turned on her. White colleagues who smiled to her face and whispered behind her back. Producers who suddenly stopped returning calls. A smear campaign built on lies and jealousy and the kind of racism that doesn't shout. It just quietly closes every door. By the time it was over, Lorraine Harris was broke, blacklisted, forgotten. She stopped performing, stopped giving interviews, stopped existing in the public eye. The world moved on, new stars rose, her name faded into trivia questions nobody could answer. She moved to a small 2-bedroom house in Stamford. She took whatever work she could find. And for the past 3 years, that work had been cleaning houses for wealthy families. She finished her coffee, ironed her uniform, and grabbed her keys. The Honda started on the 3rd try. Gospel music crackled through the old speakers. She hummed along, the way she always did. The only stage she had left was this car. 30 minutes later, she pulled into the staff lot behind the Ellsworth estate, 12,000 square feet of marble and glass. A fountain in the driveway that cost more than Lorraine's house. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and money. She walked past the garden and nodded to Tomas, the old groundskeeper. "Morning, Tomas. Morning, Miss Lorraine. Singing already?" She smiled. "Can't help it." "Don't ever stop," he said quietly. Inside, Victoria Ellsworth was on the phone in the West Wing parlor. Silk robe, untouched orange juice, a croissant with 1 bite missing. She was planning her annual charity gala, a black tie event that raised money for underprivileged youth. The irony of that would become clear soon enough. Victoria heard Lorraine come through the service entrance and didn't look up. "The bathroom still smells. Fix it. And don't touch anything in the hallway. I just had new art installed." No hello. No eye contact. Lorraine was furniture. "Yes, ma'am." Victoria's husband, Gregory Ellsworth, was the executive vice president of Pinnacle Artists Management, the most powerful talent management company in the country. Every major artist, every sold-out tour, every billion-dollar deal ran through Pinnacle, and Gregory ran the day-to-day operations. On paper, he was brilliant. In reality, he was cooking the books, skimming artist royalties, burying complaints from black employees, building his empire on the backs of people he considered beneath him. Above Gregory sat one man, the chairman of the board, Raymond Carter. Raymond was a legend in his own right, a singer, a producer, a mogul. His voice had defined a generation, and decades ago, before either of them had a dollar to their name, he and Lorraine Harris had been best friends. Two kids from nothing, singing on street corners, dreaming about stages they'd never seen. They rose together, and when Lorraine fell, Raymond tried to catch her. He spoke out. He fought. But back then his voice wasn't loud enough. The industry crushed her anyway. Raymond never forgot. He watched from a distance, sent money when she needed it, made sure she was never completely alone. And now, sitting in his office on the top floor of Pinnacle, he had no idea that 3 floors below, his own VP's wife, the woman he'd spent 30 years looking for, was on her knees, scrubbing someone else's marble floor. Not yet. It started with a smile. 2 weeks before the gala, Victoria was in the living room flipping through a stack of embossed invitations. Gold lettering, cream-colored envelopes, each one addressed to someone who mattered. Lorraine was on her knees in the hallway, scrubbing the baseboard with a toothbrush. Her back ached. Her knees cracked every time she shifted. The smell of bleach stung her nostrils, but she didn't complain. She never did. Victoria glanced at her through the open doorway, watched her for a moment, and then something flickered across her face. Not kindness, not pity, amusement. Lorraine. Yes, ma'am? Come here for a second. Lorraine stood slowly, wiped her hands on her apron, walked to the doorway. She could smell Victoria's perfume from 6 feet away. Something French, something expensive. Victoria leaned back on the sofa and crossed her legs, her lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I'm hosting my annual gala next Saturday. 300 guests, black tie, the biggest names in music, business, media. Lorraine nodded politely. She'd cleaned up after enough of Victoria's parties to know exactly what they looked like. The champagne stains, the lipstick on the crystal glasses, the cigar burns on the terrace railing. I'd like you to come. Lorraine blinked. I'm sorry? As a guest. I think it would be fun. The word fun landed wrong. It sat in the air between them like something sharp wrapped in silk. That's very kind of you, ma'am, but I wouldn't want to impose. Nonsense, Victoria waved her hand. You've been cleaning this house for 3 years. You deserve a night off. Come, enjoy yourself. Her voice was warm. Her eyes were cold. Lorraine hesitated. Something in her gut told her this wasn't right. But she looked at Victoria's face, that perfect practice smile, and she thought about all the time she'd been in rooms full of powerful people, all the time she'd belonged there and no one questioned it. All right, Lorraine said. Thank you. Wonderful. Victoria clapped her hands together. It'll be a night to remember. The moment Lorraine left the room, Victoria picked up her phone. Her thumbs moved fast. She texted her group chat. 6 of her closest socialite friends. You're not going to believe this. I invited the cleaning lady to the gala. 3 laughing replies came back instantly. I want to see what she wears. This is going to be priceless. OMG, Victoria, you're terrible. Film it. I'm begging you. Victoria grinned. She set the phone down and sipped her tea. The ice clinked against the glass. She stared out the window at the garden where Tomas was trimming roses. Entertainment. That's all this was. A little show for her friends, a joke that Lorraine would never be in on. She could already picture it. The cleaning lady standing in the middle of 300 wealthy people, completely out of place. It would be the highlight of her year. But across town, in her small kitchen, Lorraine was having a very different conversation. She called Denise Coleman, her oldest friend and attorney. She invited me to her gala. Denise was quiet for a beat. As a guest? Or as a punchline? I think both. But she doesn't know I know that. Then don't go. You don't owe her anything. You don't owe any of them anything. Lorraine leaned against the counter. The house was quiet. The faucet dripped. A clock ticked on the wall. My mama cleaned houses for 42 years, Lorraine said, and every single time someone treated her like she was less than human, she put her head down and kept working. She never once stood up for herself, not once. Lorraine, I'm not my mama, Denise. I love her. God knows I love her, but I won't do what she did. So, what are you going to do? Lorraine was quiet. She looked across the kitchen at the closet door. Behind it, in a garment bag she hadn't opened in over 15 years, was a dress. Not just any dress. The dress. Emerald green, hand-beaded, custom-made for her final concert at Madison Square Garden in 1996. The last time she stood on a stage. The last time 30,000 people chanted her name until their throats went raw. I'm going to go, Lorraine said. And I'm going to wear my dress. Denise sighed. You sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything. Saturday came fast. Lorraine stood in front of her bedroom mirror. The dress still fit. 15 years in a garment bag, and it still fit like it was made yesterday. The emerald beading caught the light from her bedside lamp. She ran her fingers over the stitching. Every bead had been sewn by hand. She remembered sitting in the fitting room in Manhattan while the designer pinned the hem. She remembered the way the spotlight hit the crystals and turned her into something that looked like it was made of green fire. She didn't wear jewelry, just a small gold locket around her neck. Inside it, a photo of her daughter. She looked at herself. Really looked. She didn't see a cleaning lady. She saw a woman who had once stood under spotlights so bright they burned. A woman who had filled arenas with nothing but her voice. A woman the world forgot. You still here, she whispered to her reflection. You still here. Her hands trembled for just a moment. Then they steadied. She straightened the locket and lifted her chin. She grabbed her keys and drove to the Ellsworth estate. The driveway was a parade of black cars. Bentleys, Mercedes, a Rolls-Royce with a driver who looked bored. Valet attendants in white gloves opened doors for women in diamonds and men in custom tuxedos. Lorraine pulled up in her Honda. The valet looked at the car, then at her, then back at the car. Ma'am, the service entrance is... I'm a guest, Lorraine said. He hesitated, then opened her door. She stepped out. The night air smelled like jasmine and expensive cologne. Music drifted from inside, a string quartet playing something soft and classical. The marble steps gleamed under golden light. She walked through the front door. The ballroom was enormous. Crystal chandeliers hung from a ceiling painted with angels. Ice sculptures shaped like swans sat on tables draped in ivory linen. Waiters in black vests carried silver trays of champagne. The room buzzed with laughter and perfume and the quiet clink of wealth. Lorraine stood at the entrance and took a breath. She recognized this feeling, the nerves, the electricity, the moment before the lights go up. But this wasn't a concert, and these people weren't her fans. Not anymore. Victoria spotted her almost immediately. She was mid-conversation with two friends near the bar. Her dress was white, tight. Her diamonds caught the light like little weapons. She turned and saw Lorraine, and her eyes went wide. Not with surprise, with delight. The kind of delight a cat shows when the mouse walks into the open. "Oh my God," Victoria said, lowering her glass. "She actually came." She set down her champagne and walked toward Lorraine. Her two friends followed like shadows. Their heels clicked in unison across the marble. Victoria stopped in front of Lorraine and looked her up and down, slowly, head to toe. Her gaze stuck on the dress, the emerald dress. And something shifted in Victoria's face. She recognized the design. Not the person, just the dress. She'd seen it in a fashion magazine once. A vintage photograph of the legendary Lorraine Harris performing at Madison Square Garden. That dress had become iconic. It was in fashion retrospectives, museum exhibits, coffee table books. Victoria's lip curled. "Where did you get that dress?" Lorraine straightened her back. "It's mine." Victoria laughed, loud, sharp, like breaking glass. "Yours? That dress is a replica of Lorraine Harris's gown, the Lorraine Harris, and you, a cleaning lady, are standing in my ballroom wearing a cheap knockoff like you're somebody." She grabbed the fabric at the shoulder, tugged it hard. The beading rattled. "Feel that? Cheap. The real one had hand-sewn crystals. This is plastic and glue." She was wrong. Every bead on that dress was hand-sewn. Every crystal was real. Because it wasn't a replica. It was the original. But Lorraine didn't say that. She just stood there, eyes steady, back straight. "You should be ashamed," Victoria hissed. "Coming into my home, wearing a costume, pretending to be something you will never be." She turned to her friends. "Can you believe this? The maid wore a Halloween costume to my gala." They laughed. Of course they laughed. Every single one of them. And Lorraine stood alone beneath the chandelier, wearing a dress that was worth more than every piece of jewelry in that room combined. She said nothing. But inside, somewhere deep, a fire that had been out for 15 years was starting to glow. The night was just getting started. Victoria didn't stop at the dress. She was only warming up. She looped her arm through Lorraine's, not out of kindness, but to steer her, the way you'd handle a dog on a leash. She paraded Lorraine through the crowd, introducing her to every cluster of guests she passed. "Everyone, this is Lorraine. She cleans my toilets." She said it the same way each time, bright smile, loud voice, eyes glittering with cruelty. "Lorraine, say hello to the Hendersons. They own half of Connecticut." Lorraine nodded politely. "Good evening." The Hendersons stared at her dress, at her shoes, at her hands, rough and cracked from years of scrubbing grout. Mrs. Henderson leaned toward Victoria and whispered, "Is she really your maid?" Victoria didn't whisper back. She wanted everyone to hear. 3 years. She scrubs my floors twice a week. And tonight, she decided to play dress-up." Laughter. Always laughter. She led Lorraine to the next group. And the next. Each time the same introduction. Each time the same punchline. Lorraine smiled politely through all of it. She nodded. She shook hands that didn't want to touch hers. Victoria led Lorraine to her seat. The worst table in the room. Table 14. Tucked behind a pillar near the kitchen entrance. The chairs wobbled. The tablecloth had a stain the caterers hadn't caught. The nearest centerpiece was already wilting. Every other table had crystal water glasses and fresh orchids. Table 14 had plastic cups. "Here you go, sweetheart. Your throne." Lorraine sat without a word. The other guests at the table, a junior intern, a +1 who came alone, a man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, glanced at her and looked away. Nobody said a word to her. From across the room, Victoria watched. She pulled out her phone and filmed a short video of Lorraine sitting alone. She typed a caption and sent it to her group chat. "She's sitting there like she's at a funeral. I can't breathe." The replies came fast, laughing, mocking, hungry for more. Victoria turned to her friend Sloane and clinked their glasses together. The night is young. Dinner was served. Lorraine ate quietly. She didn't try to talk to the other guests. She didn't try to blend in. She just sat with her back straight and her hands folded in her lap between courses. The steak was overcooked, the wine was warm, the bread was stale. Nobody refilled her water. Table 14 wasn't just the worst seat. It was designed to humiliate. Halfway through dinner, a waiter bumped Lorraine's chair while rushing past with a tray. Red wine splashed onto her sleeve. The waiter apologized. Victoria, watching from across the room, laughed so hard she nearly choked on her champagne. She didn't even try to hide it. "Looks like the dress got an upgrade," she called out. Several guests turned to look. Lorraine dabbed the stain with a napkin. Her expression didn't change. Not once. But her hand, just for a second, tightened around the cloth until her knuckles went white. After dinner, the lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the stage at the front of the ballroom. Victoria walked up the marble steps in her white gown, diamond earrings swaying. She took the microphone and smiled at the crowd. "Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 15th Annual Ellsworth Foundation Gala." Applause. She thanked the sponsors, the donors, the organizing committee. She talked about the charity, about giving back, about lifting up those less fortunate. The irony hung in the air like smoke. And then she went off script. "Before we get to the auction, I want to do something special tonight." She grinned. "We have a very unique guest with us, someone who doesn't usually get to experience this kind of evening." Lorraine felt the room shift. "Lorraine? Lorraine, stand up, honey." The spotlight swung to table 14. It hit Lorraine full in the face. She squinted. 300 heads turned. Slowly, she stood. "Everyone, this is Lorraine. She's been cleaning our home for 3 years, and I thought, in the spirit of generosity, why not let her see how the other half lives?" Scattered applause, some genuine, most uncomfortable. A few people shifted in their chairs. An older woman near the front shook her head quietly. Victoria continued, her voice sweet as poison. "Lorraine, we're so glad you could join us tonight. Tell me, are you enjoying yourself?" Lorraine's voice was steady. "I am, thank you." "Wonderful. Because I have a little surprise for you." Victoria turned to the side of the stage. A velvet display case sat on a pedestal under a glass dome. Inside it, resting on black silk, was a microphone. Not just any microphone. A vintage Neumann U48, gold-plated, engraved along the base with 2 initials, L.H. Lorraine's breath caught. Her chest tightened. Her fingers curled at her sides. She knew that microphone. She knew the weight of it, the warmth of it in her hand, the way it smelled like metal and sweat and glory under the stage lights. It was hers. The microphone she'd used at Madison Square Garden, at the Grammys, at every concert that mattered. The one she'd held the night 30,000 people wept while she sang. It had been sold at auction years ago when she lost everything. She thought it was gone forever. She had grieved that microphone the way you grieve a piece of your own body. Now it was here, in a glass case, a trophy in a rich woman's ballroom. Victoria lifted the dome and held the microphone up for the crowd. This is a piece of music history, the legendary mic used by the great Lorraine Harris, the greatest voice of her generation. Tonight, this microphone is part of our live auction. Starting bid, $1 million. Gasps from the crowd, murmurs of excitement. Phones came out. People leaned forward in their seats. Victoria paused. She let the moment breathe. Then she smiled and turned back to Lorraine, who was still standing at table 14 with the spotlight burning her face. Now, Lorraine, I hear you like to sing. My staff tells me you hum around the house all day long, like a broken radio that nobody asked to turn on. Laughter. Honestly, it's the most annoying part of my week. Every Tuesday, every Friday, this woman wanders through my hallways making noises like a cat caught in a dryer. More laughter. Louder now. Victoria stepped to the edge of the stage. Her eyes locked onto Lorraine. So here's what I'm thinking. Why don't you come up here and sing for us, right now? Into this microphone. The legendary Lorraine Harris's microphone. The room went quiet. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Her smile sharpened into something cruel. If you can actually sing, I mean really sing, not just hum while you mop, then I'll give you this microphone. No auction, it's yours. $1 million handed to the cleaning lady. She paused. Let the weight of it settle over the room like a stone sinking through water. But if you can't, if you embarrass yourself, which we both know you will, then you walk out of here tonight and you never set foot in my house again. Not as a guest, not as a maid, not as anything. She tilted her head. Her diamond earrings swayed. So what do you say, sweetheart? Want to sing for your supper? The crowd murmured. A few people laughed nervously. Someone near the front whispered, "This is cruel." The intern at table 14 looked at Lorraine with tears forming in her eyes. But no one moved. No one spoke up for her. Lorraine looked at the microphone. Her microphone. The one she had held on the greatest night of her life. The one the industry ripped from her hands along with everything else. Her name, her career, her dignity. Her eyes stung. Her jaw tightened. But she didn't cry. She didn't blink. She stepped forward, one step, then another. The crowd parted as she walked toward the stage. Her heels clicked against the marble in the silence. Each step echoed like a heartbeat. The emerald beading on her dress caught the light and scattered it across the floor like tiny green stars. She climbed the 3 marble stairs, stood center stage. The spotlight wrapped around her. For just a second, just a flash, she looked exactly like she had 30 years ago. Victoria held the mic out, grinning, waiting for the humiliation she was certain would come. Lorraine reached out and took it. The moment her fingers wrapped around that microphone, something changed in her face. Her shoulders dropped, her breathing slowed, her eyes closed. Her thumb found the familiar groove on the handle, a small dent from the night she dropped it at the Grammys, and the whole audience gasped. She didn't look like a cleaning lady anymore. She looked like a woman coming home. Victoria folded her arms. She leaned against the podium and smirked. "Whenever you're ready, sweetheart. We're all waiting." The ballroom was silent. 300 people. Not a cough, not a whisper, not a single champagne glass moving, just held breaths. And the soft sound of Lorraine breathing into a microphone she hadn't held in 15 years. She opened her mouth slowly, and she began to sing. The first note hit the room like a shockwave. It was low, soft, almost a whisper, But it carried. It reached the back wall. It reached the chandelier. It reached every single person in that ballroom. Not through volume, but through something deeper. Something that vibrates in your chest before your brain understands what it's hearing. Lorraine was singing Rise Again, her song. The song that debuted at #1 in 1994, the song that played at 3 presidential inaugurations, the song that made a generation cry and believe and fight and love harder than they thought they could. The first verse was gentle. Her eyes were still closed, her hand steady on the microphone. She wasn't performing for anyone. She was singing to herself. To the girl who used to stand on a milk crate in Hartford and belt gospel hymns until the neighbors leaned out their windows to listen. And then the chorus came. Her voice opened. It filled the room the way water fills a glass, completely, effortlessly, with nowhere left to hide. The chandelier crystals trembled. The air itself seemed to hold still. 300 people stopped breathing. A woman at table 2 covered her mouth. She grabbed her husband's arm and whispered, "Oh my God, I know that voice." A man near the bar set down his glass slowly. His hands were shaking. He pulled out his phone and began recording. The intern at table 14 was openly crying. She didn't wipe her tears. She just stared at the stage like she was watching something holy. Victoria's smile vanished. Not faded, vanished. She stood frozen at the edge of the stage, arms still crossed, but her fingers had gone white around her own elbows. Her lips parted. No sound came out. Lorraine hit the bridge, the part where the melody climbs, the part that critics once called the most beautiful 30 seconds ever recorded. Her voice soared. It cracked, not from weakness, but from 30 years of silence breaking open all at once. That crack made it more powerful, more human, more devastating. People were standing now, one by one, chairs scraping back, hands pressed against chests. A man in his 60s wept openly. He didn't care who saw. His wife held his hand and wept with him. The song ended. Lorraine held the last note, let it fade, let the silence fill the space it left behind. Then she opened her eyes. 300 people on their feet. Not applauding. Not yet. Just standing in stunned, absolute silence. Some had tears streaming. Some had their hands over their mouths. Some looked like they had just seen a ghost. Because in a way, they had. And then, from the back of the ballroom, a single pair of hands began to clap. Slow, steady, deliberate. Every head turned. A man walked through the parted crowd. Tall, silver-haired, immaculate black suit. A presence that needed no introduction, but got one anyway, in the gasps that followed him. Raymond Carter. The Raymond Carter. Grammy-winning artist. Music industry titan. Chairman of the board of Pinnacle Artists Management. The very company that employed Gregory Ellsworth. He walked straight to the stage, his eyes locked on Lorraine, glistening. He climbed the stairs, stood beside her. For a moment, neither spoke. They just looked at each other. Two old friends who had survived everything the world threw at them. Then Raymond turned to the crowd. 30 years ago, I stood on a stage just like this one with the most talented human being I have ever known. We came from nothing. We built everything together. And then this industry destroyed her. Not because she wasn't good enough. Because she was black. Because she was too good. Because she made people uncomfortable. He paused. Let it land. The woman standing next to me is not your maid. She is not your entertainment. She is not a punchline. He turned to Lorraine. His voice broke. This is Lorraine Harris. The Lorraine Harris, the greatest voice of her generation, my best friend for 40 years, and the woman you just humiliated in front of 300 people for sport. He looked at Victoria. The room turned with him. Victoria stood at the edge of the stage. Her face was white, drained of every drop of color. Her champagne glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the marble floor. The sound cut through the silence like a gunshot. Her mouth moved. No words came out. Her legs buckled. She grabbed the podium to keep from falling. Gregory Ellsworth, sitting at the VIP table, stared at his wife, then at Raymond, his boss, his chairman, and the blood left his face. Raymond's voice dropped low, cold, final. I have watched from the shadows as she cleaned your floors and endured your insults and sang quietly in your hallways. The same voice that once sold out Madison Square Garden. Tonight, you put her on a stage to humiliate her. He shook his head slowly. You picked the wrong woman, and you picked the wrong night. The room erupted. Not in laughter this time, in applause. Thundering, deafening, standing ovation applause that shook the chandeliers and rattled the champagne flutes on every table. Lorraine stood center stage, microphone in hand, tears finally falling, not from pain, from something she hadn't felt in 30 years. Recognition. She was finally home. The applause hadn't even died down when Victoria moved. She stumbled off the stage. Her heels caught on the marble stairs. She pushed through the crowd, past the staring faces, past the phones still recording, past every person who now looked at her like she was something rotten. She reached Lorraine, and she dropped to her knees, right there, in front of 300 people, in her white designer gown, on the cold marble floor. Victoria Ellsworth got on her knees in front of the woman she had called a cockroach. Lorraine, Miss Harris, I am so sorry. Her voice was shaking. Tears cut lines through her makeup. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know who you were. If I had known. Lorraine looked down at her. Her expression didn't soften. If you had known what? You would have treated me like a human being? Victoria's mouth opened. Nothing came out. That's the problem, Victoria. You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry because it had consequences. If I were just a cleaning lady, just the woman who mops your floors, would you be on your knees right now? The room was dead silent. 300 people. Not a breath. Victoria sobbed. Please, I'll do anything. I'll apologize publicly. You already did, Lorraine said quietly. The moment you humiliated me on that stage, you made it public. You just didn't think it would matter because you thought I was nobody. Victoria crumbled. She pressed her forehead to the marble floor. Her diamond earrings clinked against the stone. A sound so small in a room so quiet it might as well have been thunder. Lorraine didn't touch her, didn't comfort her. She just watched, the way you watch a storm pass, without pity. Then Raymond stepped forward. He wasn't looking at Victoria anymore. He was looking at Gregory. Gregory Ellsworth sat frozen at the VIP table, his napkin still in his lap. He looked like a man watching his own house burn down from the inside. Raymond spoke directly to him. His voice carried across the silent ballroom. Gregory. Gregory stood, his legs unsteady. Raymond, Mr. Carter, I can explain. My wife doesn't represent me or the company. This was her event. Sit down. Gregory sat. Raymond's voice was calm, controlled, devastating. I've known about you for a long time, Gregory. The financial irregularities, the buried complaints from black artists on our roster, the employees you silenced, the royalties you skimmed. I've been building a file on you for 18 months. Gregory's face went white. His hands gripped the table. I was going to handle it quietly, but after tonight, after watching your wife destroy the most important person in my life for entertainment while you sat there and did nothing? He paused. Let the silence do its work. You're done. Effective immediately, you are removed as Executive Vice President of Pinnacle Artist Management. Your access is revoked. Your accounts are frozen pending a full audit, and if the findings confirm what I already know, you will face criminal charges. Gregory's mouth opened. No sound came out. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Victoria, still on the floor, looked up at her husband, then at Raymond, then at Lorraine. The world she had built, the gala, the status, the mansion, the name, was collapsing around her in real time, and every second of it was being recorded on dozens of phones. Raymond turned to Lorraine. His voice softened. You don't have to stay another minute in this room. Lorraine nodded. She looked at the crowd one last time. 300 faces, some ashamed, some crying, some still holding phones. She turned to the intern at table 14, the young woman who had cried for her when nobody else did. Thank you, Lorraine said softly, for seeing me before anyone else did. The intern couldn't speak. She just nodded, tears running down her cheeks. Lorraine handed the microphone to Raymond. She straightened the emerald dress, the same dress Victoria had ripped and mocked and poured champagne on, and she walked off that stage. Through the silent crowd, past the shattered glass on the floor, past Victoria, still crumpled on the marble, past Gregory, who couldn't meet her eyes. She walked through the front door of the Ellsworth estate for the last time. The night air hit her face, cool, clean, quiet. She got into her Honda, turned the key. The gospel station crackled to life, and she drove home. By morning, the world knew. The first video hit social media at 11:47 p.m., uploaded by a guest sitting 3 tables from the stage. Shaky footage, dim golden lighting, but the audio was crystal clear. Victoria's voice, mocking, sneering, calling Lorraine a cockroach, ripping her dress, pouring champagne on her, challenging her to sing for a room full of strangers who were laughing at her. And then, Lorraine singing. That voice, unmistakable, rising from nothing into something that shook the chandelier and silenced 300 people in under 10 seconds. The video was 3 minutes and 42 seconds long. By 2 a.m., it had 4 million views. By sunrise, 26 million. The internet did what the internet does. It found everything. Within hours, clips were stitched together from multiple angles. Someone had filmed Victoria's group chat messages, screenshots leaked by one of her own friends. The messages were published in full, every joke, every laughing reply, every plan to humiliate the cleaning lady at the gala. The hashtag started small, then it spread like fire. Lorraine Harris is back. It trended in the United States by 6 a.m. By noon, it was trending globally. Celebrities reposted the video. Musicians who had grown up listening to Lorraine shared her old recordings. People who had never heard of her before were now watching her 1994 Grammy performance on loop. Nadine Brooks, an investigative journalist, published the first major feature that afternoon. The headline, "The cleaning lady they laughed at was the greatest voice of her generation, and she just brought a mansion down." The article didn't just cover the gala. It traced the full history of Lorraine Harris, her rise, her destruction, the industry that blacklisted her because she was a black woman who refused to shrink. It named names, it cited sources, it connected dots buried for 30 years. Cable news picked it up by evening. Panels debated, commentators argued. Some defended Victoria. She didn't know who she was. Others shut that down. That's the whole point. She treated a human being like garbage because she thought there would be no consequences. Gregory Ellsworth's name surfaced next. Not because of the gala, because of what Raymond Carter had said on that stage. The financial irregularities, the silenced employees, the skimmed royalties. Pinnacle Artists Management released a statement within 24 hours. Gregory Ellsworth has been removed from his position as Executive Vice President, effective immediately. An internal audit is underway. The company is cooperating fully with all relevant authorities. 3 former Pinnacle employees, all black, all women, came forward within the week. Years of racial harassment, promotions denied, complaints buried. One woman described being told by Gregory that she should be grateful to have a seat at the table at all. Another said she had been fired for reporting him and forced to sign an NDA on her way out. The state attorney general opened a formal investigation. Subpoenas were issued, financial records seized. Gregory retained the most expensive defense attorney in Connecticut. It didn't matter. The evidence was already in Raymond's file. 18 months of documentation, emails, receipts, testimony. Gregory Ellsworth was charged with embezzlement, fraud, and workplace discrimination. He posted bail and disappeared from public life. The man who once ran the biggest talent management company in America couldn't get a meeting with anyone. Victoria fared no better. 2 days after the gala, she posted a video apology on social media. She sat in her living room, no makeup, eyes swollen, voice trembling. The background was carefully staged, a bookshelf, soft lighting, but nothing could hide the desperation. I want to sincerely apologize to Ms. Lorraine Harris and to everyone who was hurt by my actions. What I did was inexcusable. I take full responsibility. The comments destroyed her. Thousands of replies, most of them some version of the same thing. You're only sorry because you got caught. Lorraine's words from the gala echoed in every thread. You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry because it had consequences. Victoria's charity board removed her within the week. The Ellsworth Foundation was dissolved. Sponsors pulled out. Donors demanded refunds. The gala that was supposed to be her crowning achievement became the thing that ended her. Her social circle evaporated overnight. The friends who had laughed at the gala unfollowed her, blocked her, denied knowing her. The group chat that had planned Lorraine's humiliation was now evidence in a civil complaint. Victoria and Gregory separated within the month. The divorce was quiet, not out of dignity, but because neither had anything left worth fighting over. The mansion was listed for sale. The fountain in the driveway, the one that cost more than Lorraine's house, was drained and covered with a tarp. And through all of it, Lorraine said nothing. She gave one interview. Just one. A sit-down with Nadine Brooks, filmed in her small kitchen in Stamford. The same kitchen where she had ironed her cleaning uniform every morning. She didn't attack Victoria. She didn't gloat. She talked about her mother Dorothy, who had cleaned houses in Hartford for 42 years without ever hearing a thank you. She talked about the night she was blacklisted, how she came home to an empty apartment and sat on the floor and didn't move for 3 days. She talked about what it felt like to hold that microphone again, about the crack in her voice during the bridge of Rise Again, and how that crack was the sound of everything she'd been holding inside, finally breaking free. I didn't sing that night to prove anything to Victoria, Lorraine said. I sang because that microphone was mine. That song was mine. And I wasn't going to let anyone take that from me again. The interview went viral. Measured, graceful, devastating. Not because Lorraine raised her voice, but because she never needed to. 2 weeks later, Raymond Carter called her. "I need someone I trust to take Gregory's position. Someone who understands what it's like to be chewed up by this industry. Someone who will protect the people who can't protect themselves." Lorraine was quiet for a long time. "I'm not going back on stage, Raymond. I'm not asking you to sing. I'm asking you to lead." She looked at the chipped mug on the counter, the one that said "World's Best Mom." She thought about her mother. She thought about every black artist who had been silenced the way she was. "All right," she said. "I'll do it." Lorraine Harris, the woman who had scrubbed marble floors on her hands and knees for 3 years, became the new executive vice president of Pinnacle Artist Management. Not for revenge, because she wanted to make sure what happened to her never happened to anyone else. 6 months later, the corner office on the 32nd floor of Pinnacle Artist Management had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, steel and glass and sunlight cutting through morning fog. Lorraine Harris sat behind the desk, not in a designer suit, not in diamonds. A simple black blouse, reading glasses on her nose, and the same gold locket she'd worn to the gala, the one with her daughter's photo inside. On the desk sat a framed picture of her mother, Dorothy. Next to it, the Newman U-48 microphone. She kept it not as a trophy, but as a reminder of where she'd been, of what she'd survived, of why she was here. Her first act as executive vice president was to launch an internal review of every contract involving artists of color at Pinnacle. Within 3 months, 16 contracts were renegotiated. 4 predatory deals were terminated. A new division was created, the Harris Initiative, dedicated to protecting emerging black artists from the kind of exploitation the industry had perfected for decades. She hired the intern from the Gala, the young woman from table 14 who had cried when nobody else did. Her name was Brianna. She became Lorraine's executive assistant. On her first day, she set a new mug on Lorraine's desk. It said "World's Best Boss." Lorraine laughed for the first time in months. Thomas, the old groundskeeper from the Ellsworth estate, now worked as the building's head of facilities. Every morning, he brought Lorraine coffee, and they talked for 10 minutes before the day started. Just like they used to. Except now, neither of them was invisible. Raymond stopped by once a week. Sometimes they talked business. Sometimes they sat in silence and listened to old records, the songs they used to sing on street corners in Hartford when they were 17 and broke and dreaming. One afternoon, he looked at her and said, "You could still perform. One concert, just one. The world would lose its mind." Lorraine shook her head. "I already had my encore, Raymond. That night at the Gala was enough." He smiled. "Yeah, I guess it was." Victoria Ellsworth's life looked very different now. The mansion was sold, the art auctioned, the divorce finalized. She moved to a small apartment in a different state. She took a part-time job at a retail store. The social media account that once curated her perfect life, the galas, the gowns, the champagne, was deleted. She was seen once carrying groceries in the rain. The photo circulated briefly. The comments were vicious. Then the world moved on. Victoria Ellsworth became what she feared most: nobody. Gregory was awaiting trial, his assets frozen, his name a punchline in boardrooms across the country. The empire he built on stolen money and silenced voices had crumbled so completely that even his own attorneys struggled to find character witnesses willing to speak on his behalf. The industry noticed. Other companies quietly launched their own internal reviews. 2 executives at rival firms resigned before investigations could reach them. The ripple of one woman singing one song in a ballroom in Greenwich, Connecticut, was still spreading. So let me ask you this. If Lorraine had never sung that night, If Raymond had never walked in, if she had just been a cleaning lady with no famous past and no powerful friends, would what Victoria did have been any less wrong? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear what you think. And if this story hit you the way it hit me, drop a like. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because stories like this matter, not because they're true, but because they could be. The last image, Lorraine, alone in her office after hours, the city lights glowing through the windows. She picks up the microphone from her desk, holds it for a moment, closes her eyes, and hums.
Can I be honest with you for a second? The world can take a lot from you. Your job, your money, your name, your reputation. People can close every door, turn off every light, make you feel like you were never anything at all. But there's one thing nobody can touch. That's inside you. Your gift, your talent, the thing that makes you you. That doesn't go away just because the world stopped paying attention. It doesn't die just because someone decided you don't matter anymore. It's still there, waiting, quiet, patient, ready for a moment you decide to let it out again. So, if the world told you to be quiet, if they took the stage, took the spotlight, took everything and left you with nothing but a mark and memory, know this, your voice is still yours, your gift is still yours, and one day, maybe when you least expected it, you are going to open your mouth and the whole room is going to remember what they forgot. Don't let them silence you, not forever, not ever. Like, share and subscribe real stories, real justice every week. And remember, they can take your stage, they can take your spotlight, but they can never take your voice. That's yours. It's always war.